Hello and welcome to episode 370 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. I'm Nathan Fox. That's Ben Olson. Together, we're the co-founders of LSATdemon.com and the LSAT Demon Daily podcast. This show is going to air on Monday, October 3rd. Next registration deadline, Thursday, December 1st. You have to decide whether you want to register for the January 2023 LSAT. You can get all those dates by going to lsat.link/dates. Come to my free classes. Thursday, October 6th, I'm going to be teaching a class called What It Takes to Score 170. You just need to go to lsat.link/Nathan. Today on the show, we had an excellent interview at the top of the show with my old friend and Ben's new friend, Alison Monahan. Alison is a Columbia law grad. She's written for Ms. JD for forever, founder of Law School Toolbox, Girl's Guide to Law School, million different projects, Law School Toolbox podcast. She's got like about the same number of episodes as us, Ben, 300 something, lots of episodes of the Law School Toolbox podcast with Lee Burgess. And we're going to lead off with an interview with Alison. So I guess let's just jump right in, huh, Ben?
Yep, let's do it.
Alison, you were on the Thinking LSAT podcast way back when with just me. Is that correct?
I think that is correct, but that has definitely been a while, and I couldn't tell you really what we talked about.
Possibly more than once, but it's going to be on an episode. Episodes way back there, like in the first 100. Alison,
they're probably really bad before we knew what we were doing.
Oh God, they're still bad.
Me, not you.
Imagine how bad they are now, or how bad they were then.
I know.
Anyway, so let's see, Alison, we were living in San Francisco at the same time, and I had my little beginning LSAT prep business. Ben and I had started the Thinking LSAT podcast. We had you on the show. Back then, you were doing lots of things that you're definitely still doing now. You're the founder of Girl's Guide to Law School. That was, wow, almost 12 years ago now.
Crazy.
You and Lee co-founded Law School Toolbox. That's now 10 and a half years ago, or almost 11 years ago. Trebuchet was 9 years ago. Oh, you've been with Ms. JD writing for forever before that. That's all just from your LinkedIn. You were doing all that stuff then, so maybe you just haven't updated your LinkedIn in a while.
That is entirely possible. I can't say that I'm super active on LinkedIn. I was like, Trebuchet, haven't heard that for a while.
Yeah.
I think that got rebranded like several times. If
Okay.
anyone wants career help, they can go to our Career Dicta website now. So I do basically at this point, the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and then we have a little bit of career stuff on the Career Dicta. But yeah, I mean, we have 2 podcasts now, which is crazy. You were actually one of the impetuses for starting the first one, and it's been great. And millions of downloads, totally crazy how many man hours people listen to these things. But so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's just like any idiot can do it, right? I mean, that's like the secret behind all these things is that you just like, you just do it. And then if people like it, then you keep doing it and then it grows. I mean, it's not
right. Exactly. Like I said, we certain things rebranded multiple times, didn't really work. Other things like, hey, people like to listen to me talk about law school. Who knew?
1,000%. We were laughing. We were laughing before we started recording. We were laughing about when Alison and Lee tried to teach me the bar exam. Like we were going to do a podcast together, the 3 of us, where they coached me on the bar because I never took the California bar. And they had me do like one sample essay or something. And we tried to sit down and record one episode. And it became immediately apparent that I knew nothing and actually had no interest in learning any of the stuff. And so we just completely aborted. It was a very silly. If anybody's interested. Go ahead.
No, it seemed like a good enough idea until we actually put one toe in it. And we're like, yeah, this is definitely not a good idea for anyone. And Nathan is going to be really bored with this.
Oh my God. I was so bored immediately. I couldn't do any of it. And I only bring that up because, we're all 3 entrepreneurs here. And if anybody is interested in entrepreneurship at all, my number one tip for entrepreneurship is that you just have to do shit and then be willing to let it fail and then walk away from it and then try something else. Like people spend so long thinking about their ideas and they never just actually implement like, okay, let's do the shittiest version of this that we can possibly do. And let's see what we got. And
yeah, exactly.
That's where my podcast came from. That's where your podcast came from. That's where all of our shit came from, really, is just like, okay, let's fire, then aim, like see what we got.
Well, and I feel like there's with a lot of students too. I don't know if you see this with your LSAT students, but for us, sometimes people come in and they're like, well, I need the exact roadmap that's going to work for me. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to work for you. Here are like 5 things you could try and see which one works best. Maybe get started. I don't know.
Yeah. Ben, we have the exact same thing with LSAT students. Yeah.
We do. I mean, people 6 months out from their test, they want a daily schedule that's set out. And it's how long is it going to take you to actually learn those ideas? I don't know. Why don't you just do a question and learn from that? And then we'll talk, right? Because things will change.
Ben, it's a side thing, but we've been investigating maybe an SAT business, and we started yesterday looking at Khan Academy, or I was looking at Khan Academy for SAT. And the very first thing that Khan has you do is, what's your test date? And then it works backward from your test date to build a study plan. And that to me is the worst possible way they could do it, because like a freshman in high school looks at that and goes, test date? I don't have a test date. Okay, so this isn't for me. Or a sophomore in high school would do potentially the same thing. Like, well, I don't have a date. Well, okay, so maybe I shouldn't be prepping. And then it's like, okay, so you're a junior now or a senior and you are going to take the SAT. Oh, you're taking the SAT in 6 weeks. Okay, here's your 6-week schedule for the SAT. And it's like, yeah, but that might be not nearly enough time to actually get prepped. It's just a totally backward way of doing things. I guess it's...
Did they ask for a goal score?
I didn't even click through it far enough to know if they were going to ask me for a goal score. That probably was the next thing, though. Yeah, because that's what they do for LSAT. Khan Academy is like, when are you taking the test, and what score do you want to get, and what are you at right now? Oh, you need to improve by 49 points in 10 days. Okay, here's how you do it.
Well, I had a student who said he wanted to go up, I don't know, 32 points based on his goal score or something like that. And it was like, okay, well then you need to go up this many points a week. And it's like,
no problem.
Good luck, accomplishing that. 12 points a week. Okay, good. Do it.
That's just not how things work these days. Okay, so Alison, what have you been up to? We wanted you on the show just to catch up, but we also wanted to hear about what's new in the world of bar exam, law schools generally, really anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, the pandemic has definitely been interesting and a little crazy. Not bad necessarily for our business per se, but definitely, I'm sure you've seen the same things. Just all of these tests are just like, now we're online, now we're not, now we're doing this, now we're on this date, now we're not. Like the bar, for example, shifted 6 months or something in the beginning. So all of that's kind of stabilizing a little bit, I think. So yeah,
Tell us I'm actually really curious about that. So California bar went online.
Yeah. So
how long?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've honestly blocked a lot of this out. So yeah, pandemic, March 2020. So yeah, so we're supposed to be doing the July 2020 bar, right? So everyone's getting ready for that. So yeah, that went online. I think they went online. It depends on the UBE or California. States did it differently, but they did probably 3 or 4 bar exams fully online with all.
And then they came back.
Yeah, so now they're pretty much all back in person, I think.
Wow.
With no online option?
No online option. I think the last exam across the country was fully in person. So yeah, they've kind of just gone back to now we're all going to sit 1,000 people in a room and hope nobody gets sick or anything or is distracted by having 1,000 people in the room with them.
Why do they want it in person?
Honestly,
as
I
opposed
think
to online.
It's their security stuff. They're just freaked out about. To be honest, I'm sure people were cheating on the online version. They're probably cheating on the in-person version in some ways too, but I don't know. It's one of those things they didn't really do the greatest job necessarily of scanning people's rooms and things. So it's pretty easy. You're like, oh yeah, you could just post your notes right behind your computer. Nobody's ever going to look at them.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people did that, but in a place where you have to memorize a bunch of stuff, it's definitely tempting.
I would have done that. I would have cheated easily. I didn't want to do the work. I would have done it the easiest possible way. So if the easiest possible way was to just have notes, then I would have done it. LSAT, you can't possibly have notes. There's nothing.
No. So the LSAT's
and you can't
different.
Google the answer either, right?
Right. It's testing aptitude versus the bar exam is testing some combination of aptitude plus whatever you've memorized. And so there is a pretty strong temptation, I think, there to,
Yeah, maybe not aptitude. Maybe we just say skills instead, because it's certainly learned aptitude. I think which I would say
I don't think
a
it's
skill.
like talent or anything like that.
Right.
I think
Okay,
skills is like the better word. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the bar exam is memorize a whole bunch of stuff, and the LSAT is 0. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So so everything is now fully back in person for the bar exams. Wow.
Yeah. And so, that impacted law schools as well, because obviously they went virtual. And so then they were giving virtual exams, the ones that hadn't done it. So that was kind of interesting. So you used to have this kind of split between like the places that always gave open book exams, the Columbia, the Harvards, the Yales of the world, and then the places that didn't, and then the places that didn't were. And so there, I think it's kind of a little bit more fluid in terms of, are they going back to just the classic, like closed book, memorize everything exam or not? So, there's been a lot of flux in terms of like how people are doing school and how they're doing, how they're interacting with their professors. And in some ways, I think the schools is actually a better opportunity, because they did see that like, oh, they're actually, there are benefits to being in class in person, but there are also benefits to not being in class in person for people who have like kids at home or like emergency situations. Like, why can't you just Zoom in if you're going to have to be like someplace else that day? So I think some places are becoming more flexible.
Has anything moved on the bar privilege campaign?
There's a lot of movement right now in kind of the whole bar space. I'm actually going to a webinar, I think later this week, by the people who do the UBE, talking about they're calling it like the next gen bar exam. So they are making some changes. I think they're probably almost certainly going to drop the multiple choice. And it's unclear like how much is going to have to be sort of memorization versus more like skills, reading something and doing something type stuff. But it's definitely changing. I mean, California is doing they're having a lot of meetings on what they want to do in terms of like diploma privilege and things like that. And also, are they going to redo their bar exam? Are they ultimately going to shift to the UBE when it moves to this new format? I mean, that seems to be the writing on the wall. I can't imagine that they're going to keep doing their own indefinitely. But you never know with California, definitely a little weird out here. But yeah, so there's actually, I think 2026, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, is kind of when the UBE is targeting like their new exam. So that's coming up pretty quickly, actually.
California lowered its cut score a while back.
They did, right? But yeah, they lowered the cut score. They didn't necessarily increase the pass rate. Interesting. So, California, always a little strange.
Interesting. What else is new in the world of how's it going with law school tutoring?
It's good. I mean, we do what we do. People come to us and they're like, yeah, I'm having trouble like keeping up with my reading and figuring out what's going to be on the test and how to write it down. I'm like, great, we can help you with that. This is kind of like what we do. So it's always interesting, like the beginning of the year, because you get your like really, we have a Start Law School Write program in the summer. And so some like really, on it people sign up for that. And then starting in like September and moving into October, we get kind of the freaked out 1Ls who are like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? I've been in this program for like 4 to 6 weeks and now I'm totally drowning. And I had a midterm and I've never failed anything in my life. And suddenly my teacher is telling me like, I'm at the bottom of the class. So this is, we start getting phone calls at that point.
Quick question for you, Allison. Well, I don't know if it's actually quick, but I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and it says the Girl's Guide to Law School exists for one reason: to help you get what you want from your law school experience. And I was just curious, what do people want to get from their law school experience? I assume that most people just wanted the best grades they can get and, try to get a job. Expand my understanding of what people want to get out of the law school experience.
I think that's actually a really interesting question, because I think people do often go into it, and depending on the school they're going into, they kind of go into with like a different default option. So like I went to Columbia. As soon as you go, you set foot on campus and suddenly they're like, awesome, we have all these amazing like big law firms you can talk to. They're going to come to campus. Like they're going to hire you. This is going to be so great. You're going to love it. And everyone's kind of like, oh, all right, well, I'll consider that option. But a lot of people didn't come in kind of expecting that they were going to do that. So I think that's kind of what sort of the point is like, most of the people, I mean, if you look at the statistics on this, we know most lawyers are not super happy a lot of the time. But if you look at the data, a lot of people who are happier are actually the people who kind of stepped off maybe that default path of just like, oh, I'm going to be on this like conveyor belt that's going to take me into this large law firm and they're going to pay me a lot of money and I'm going to work all the time and it's going to be great. I mean, most people don't like that job, let's be honest. In fact, I just recorded a podcast with someone on our team about why big law might not be for you. And it was a fun podcast for us anyway.
Say a little bit. Who is the type of person who you think big law is not for them?
Well, I mean, I think it's an open question. Who it really is for is probably my response to that. I think I don't have a problem, whatever, people should go do what they want to do, but I think they should just understand what they're getting into. And the reality is, the structure of the way the large law firm is set up and the way that people are paid contributes to certain things that most people do not end up enjoying as a lifestyle. So, if you're getting paid a salary and the partner's making money based on how many hours you work, you don't have to be that smart to kind of figure out how this is going to end up. Like you're going to be working basically all the time. They own your time. Like somebody can call you at 3 a.m. and tell you to cancel your vacation and go to work. Shockingly, most people don't really like that over the long term. So it's kind of stuff like that where it's like, just be aware of what you're getting into and kind of what you're signing up for and have an exit strategy. So in terms of like the experience, going back to your original question, I think it's worth thinking about how am I going to position myself for like that next job that maybe is what I think I actually want to do? Or like, what is this about for me? I had a roommate who didn't care at all about grades because she was like very public interest focused and she literally stopped looking at them, like, which is shocking to people. But she had someone else check her transcript basically to make sure every semester she was going to graduate.
Wow. That's a nice luxury if you can get it.
No, but she worked really hard. She just worked really hard in different ways. She was very committed to like the work that she was doing, the people she was meeting and all those kind of things, not like what grade she got in some random class that she didn't really care about.
Which unfortunately is what it seemed like the majority of people were thinking about during law school, at least in my experience.
And there's a reason people end up like being pretty unhappy in law school too. And I think part of it is like, I don't know. I think a lot of people, I don't know if you guys have kind of seen this with your students, they may come in with a slightly unrealistic idea of what they're signing up for, and I laugh now, like thinking back to orientation and, everyone's like, oh yeah, like, what kind of law are you interested in? I think I said I was going to do like constitutional law or whatever. I'm like, it's like, what does that even mean? Like I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah. I think I was like, oh, maybe intellectual property. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's going to be me. I'm going to do intellectual property.
Well, see, weirdly, like I did end up doing that, but that's because I had been a programmer beforehand, but that thought never occurred to me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be an appellate litigator and do con law, Like how many people do that in the country? Like maybe a few hundred.
There's this podcast, we mentioned it a couple episodes ago, Ben, the 5-4 podcast. Then they do that one like kind of annual beginning of the year. Here's what you're getting into if you go to law school episode. I can't remember the exact name of it, but check out the 5-4 podcast and look at the one about going to law school. But that was one of their complaints, was that law school is so structured, especially in the 1L year. It's so, I guess the firms are what makes it this way, but it's so structured toward big law in the first year that many people, according to them on the podcast anyway, it steer, like you were saying, Alison, it just steers people who had never thought about big law down these big law paths because, hey, OCI is going to be here, first semester next year, and you got to get your 1L grades so that you can. How are you doing OCI? Yeah. And then it's just so focused on that it, that law school actually just makes people go that route. Not really intentionally, but that's the effect of it.
Well, I think the other thing is it's so focused on like litigation type of classes and skills that, even when you go into a firm, they're like, do you want to do litigation or corporate? And you're like, I don't even know what corporate is. What does that even mean? So you don't do any of that type of stuff in the typical first year. And that's a huge universe of like people who actually practice law. Probably, I would say I would guess actual litigators are probably a subset, less than half of like the overall attorneys. So there's this whole universe of stuff that people might be interested in or, good at or whatever, more suited for, that just doesn't even get touched.
Yeah. I mean, appellate litigation is like all you talk about in law school. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, it's funny because when you mention constitutional law and appellate litigation, I think of my one friend who I was talking to, and he works at Sidley Austin, and he does Supreme Court cases and so forth. And, that's the kind of thing that a lot of people aspire to. But what surprised me when I talked to him is how, I don't know if he's burned out or it just wasn't the right fit for him. But he talks about how every time he gets a new case, he feels like he's learning a whole new area of law, because he's an appellate litigator, which means he specializes in that and not necessarily ERISA or whatever. And so there's this brain drain. He's just like, oh, okay, let's go learn this area. And you'd think that would be, I don't know, exciting or interesting, but he seems done.
He sounds like a little burned out. I mean, I did think that was legitimately like one of the more interesting things about practice being a litigator, was you did get dropped into these things, and it's really hard, but I thought it was interesting, So they're like, all right, you're like in this new universe, like figure it out, become like a world leading expert. It's actually funny. I have a rental unit in San Francisco, and I was getting a new tenant recently, and one of the guys who applied was a lawyer. And I was showing him the closet system I was like, oh, it's from the Container Store. It's an alpha system. You can reconfigure it. And he just started laughing. And I'm like, what? He's like, I literally just did a patent case on this. I'm like, oh, so you know more about this fucking closet system than like anyone on the planet right now.
Yeah, you're a professional student, right? That's one of the markers for sure, I think, of someone who is bound for litigation or could be successful in litigation, is that they want to be a professional student. Like, give me the big complicated board game that we're just opening up for the first time ever. I want the book because I want to read the instruction manual and I want to learn all the rules of this whole system. That's the people I think that do well.
Well, that's why I like doing IP stuff, actually. Like, I was a patent litigator, and basically my job a lot of the time was like, oh, like, let's go find some prior art for this like internet patent. So I would basically like work with our expert, and I would just spend my days on like the Wayback Machine looking for some random thing that, we could present as evidence. And I was like, this is pretty fun. Like, I just hated the lifestyle part of it. I didn't hate the work necessarily.
Yeah. Talk a little bit, since I didn't know that you had gotten to career dicta. Do you want to talk about career dicta a little bit? What are you guys doing over there?
Oh, yeah. So there, I mean, honestly, this is kind of sort of an attempt to help people figure out some of the things we've been talking about. I mean, some of it's practical. Like, okay, you are doing OCI, like, is your resume okay? Like, where are you applying? Like, let's do some mock interviews, that type of thing. But we can also help people sort of more generally who just want to sort of explore options and like talk about, okay, if this doesn't work out, like, what am I going to do next? Just kind of having somebody there essentially for like coaching, accountability. I think people are finding it helpful and they're getting good results. So that is always exciting.
And that's, you're working with law students there
typically, or like recent grads, but typically it's people in law school kind of trying to figure out summer jobs, permanent positions, that kind of thing.
Changes in job market from your perspective? Where are we going?
Yeah, interestingly enough, we just did a podcast on this that I think came out this week. So yeah, I think we're at a weird point, right? Like, I think the economy overall is at a weird point. I don't think anyone really knows exactly where we're going. I think at least like big firm hiring is definitely slowing down. It's definitely doesn't seem to be the kind of 2008 like blow up disaster. We're like cutting all of our summer classes and firing everyone. Like, that's not happening. But I definitely think we're shifting away into people being more selective. Students maybe having to hustle a little more, work those connections, like maybe not be quite so picky about what they're asking for, and just kind of go with the flow a bit.
Let's see, what episode was that? That
might have actually just come out yesterday.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's in the podcast feed, but not yet on your
I don't know. It might be coming up next week. I honestly don't know. Someone mentioned it to me this morning. They're like, it's a great time to be like releasing this. And I thought it came out this week, but maybe it's next week. So stay tuned. I don't know when you guys are releasing this, but by then it'll probably be out if it's not already.
This will be out in a week. And we're all talking about the Law School Toolbox podcast. Is that right? You put everything on that channel now?
Yeah, we actually have two. So we have the Law School Toolbox, which was our original one. I think we're up around 300 plus episodes there. Yeah. And then we have the Bar Exam Toolbox, which started later, and also proving like pretty popular with people studying for the bar. That one, we've definitely focused a little more on substantive material. So, and actually we've moved some of that to the law school side as well because it was popular, but we'll do these little like listen and learn episodes where we take a very specific piece of law, kind of explain it to people and then apply it a few times. And so those have been, people seem to find those really helpful.
Those are shorter episodes?
Yeah, they're kind of in like 20-ish minutes typically. I mean, unless one of our tutors who are writing them really gets going, but we try to keep them a little shorter.
I see. Cool.
I'm just curious a little more about this career dicta. When people come to you, what are they typically struggling with? Is it just that they know what they want, but they can't figure out how to get there, or they're not even sure what to apply, what kind of jobs to seek? Or
I think it's both. Sometimes people are really just like, okay, I'm doing OCI. I'm not happy with my resume. I'm not happy with like the support I'm getting from my school. I want an outside eye. And then some people are more, we talk to people who are just totally all over the place. So like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this area of law or this other area that's completely unrelated, or possibly this other totally unrelated area as well. And we're like, all right, so let's like talk about what that might look like, how you could have these the different paths or whatever, but, is one of them preferable? Like, is one of them need to start sooner? How are you staging this sort of thing? And then a lot of it, I think, is just helping people figure out kind of what their resources are, based on their personal profile. Maybe their grades aren't as good as they could be, but they have other things going for them, that kind of thing, of having that kind of outside perspective of like, let's look at the whole picture, kind of figure out what's your story, like, how are you going to position this? And then frankly, like helping them follow through is often big as well. Because I think it's pretty overwhelming, like law school is overwhelming, like finding a job is overwhelming. And just having somebody kind of there to be like, all right, you said you were going to send out 4 applications this week. It doesn't look like you've done that. Like, where are they? Like, what's your plan? Why is this not happening? Do you need a therapist? Like, what's happening here?
Okay, interesting. So would you say like maybe your number one piece of, or your most common piece of advice for some of these folks or law students looking for jobs is just execution, or making
I think that's so much of it. I think, it's one of those things that's like everybody knows they need to take care of, but nobody really wants to deal with. And so people just kind of put it off. And then it becomes like a bigger and bigger and bigger problem because they haven't done anything. And so now they're like behind the 8 ball, and then they're like, oh my gosh, so our advice is always like, look, this is something that you can do over time consistently and actually block out time in your schedule, like literally every week, okay, this is the hour every week that I'm going to be like looking for my job or whatever. And like, so, obviously if you're like in the midst of it, you've got to do more than that. But just something that's like, even 30 minutes, like, okay, 30 minutes a week, like, am I going to reach out to someone? Am I going to like plan to go to an event? Am I going to look at like something I need to sign up for? Like, I'm sure you see this with your students studying too. Like so much of this is just showing up consistently and like doing the work versus like, oh my God, I haven't done anything. Now I'm super stressed out. And it's become this whole thing about how stressed out I am. And I'm still not doing anything. So I think kind of talking people down from that of like, all right, I hear that you're like worried about this, but let's like pick one thing you can do this week and like kind of get that momentum started can be really helpful.
Breaking it down into the next step. And then doing that step.
Yeah, exactly. And like,
it's just kind of like life.
Right. Exactly. It's like you do that repeatedly. And then, eventually it's like, oh, I went and like walked around the block today. And then I did it the next day and the next day. And then maybe I decide I'm going to start running a little bit or like whatever. It's not like I'm going to train for a marathon. And I think sometimes people who go to law school have that mentality of like, if I'm not training for the marathon, it's not worth doing. So I have to be training.
Yeah,
I have to be training for the marathon or doing nothing. It's like there's a lot of space in between there.
Any news with you made a class called Start Law School Right, and that's still on the Law School Toolbox website. Is that an active thing? Is that being updated or?
Yeah, so basically with that, it's kind of a hybrid model. So people come and we walk them through sort of the whole process of being a law student over the summer. So we work with like a single case. They read it, they brief it, they outline, the sort of law that's covered, and then they actually do an exam. And so they work throughout the course with our tutors. So they'll submit an assignment and get feedback on it. And so I think it's good for people, just to kind of have that sense of like, what are you aiming for at the end? Like, what does a law school exam look like and feel like, and what are they testing? Because, it's so easy to get caught up in just like the day-to-day of like going to class and like, it's all about these cases I'm reading and I have to memorize like what each case is. And like, that's not really what we're doing. So I think having that experience beforehand can just give people a little bit of perspective and kind of, take that step back of like, why are we reading this? Like, how am I going to use this? And actually, hopefully be thinking about that and working same thing, like working towards that throughout the semester instead of it's Thanksgiving and now I'm like, oh my God, I have to start outlining and like, oh my God, like it's like, that's just a lot. I mean, I did that, I admit it, but it was a lot of stress.
It's just the hardest way to do it. It's the most stressful way to do it. And it seems like that's how people have learned to study maybe in high school and in college. And, we got Khan Academy out there apparently training people to think this way. Like, just kind of wait until you can't put it off and then just like try to do it all in one big last minute push. And we have found certainly in LSAT world, when we started, Allison, when we started doing LSAT prep, we thought that like, you can improve by 10 points. Maybe, like 10 points if you give it a good effort. And that's coming from an old school mindset where we taught 10-week classes or 12-week classes. We had a start date and an end date, and the end date was right before your test. And that's how LSAT prep was done.
There you go. Good luck.
And when LSAT prep was done that way, it was like, oh yeah, if we can get you a 10-point improvement, we feel awesome. Since we switched to doing it in a subscription way where people just kind of, it's like you're signing up for your gym or you're signing up for your yoga studio or whatever, and you're going to work on your, LSAT fitness over a potentially long period of time and just kind of civilized, do an hour a day with us. And since we've done that, we now see people improving on their LSAT by 20 points, 25 points. We had multiple 30-point improvements this year on a test that only has 60 points on the entire scale.
No, that's really impressive. But it's interesting because we actually saw a very similar thing when the first COVID bar exam was postponed. So they postponed it from July until October, and the pass rates were so much higher. And people were like, what happened? I'm like, they had more time to study. They weren't doing like 8 to 10 week crash course Barbary. Like, of course they learned more. Like, this should not be shocking.
I've never thought of that either. Yeah. It's like, well, law school doesn't prepare you for the bar. Everybody does Barbary. Everybody does a crash course. It's literally 6 days a week. Just scheduled right up until the actual test. Yeah, 7 days a week. Sure.
Start memorizing 2 weeks before the test. I'm like, are you joking? Like the volume, like this is insanity. And
bar passage rates have been always low, right? I've always been thinking about like, oh, wow, California bar is really hard. Like the pass rate sometimes is like 45%. Like what's going on? And oh, well, maybe we need to look at what bar prep has been doing for
so, we work with a lot of students who are like spreading stuff out more for whatever reason. They're working, they're studying, they have family obligations. And like, everyone's like, oh, I'm so worried about burning out. I'm like, we're not going to give you so much to do every day that you burn out. That's kind of the point. Like we have to balance this so that you're doing something over time and actually like internalizing it and thinking about it and learning it. But you're not trying to do 12-hour days, like 7 days a week, because you can't learn that way anyway.
Yeah. Fitness is the paradigm to think about. It just doesn't have to be 12-hour days aren't going to be the right thing to do. That's
no,
not
like
good.
Your brain is not functioning at that point. Like it's just not. Like there's no way that you can be functional like studying that intensively.
Your body would not be functioning if you worked out for 12 hours. You'd be in a coma.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is I don't know, maybe it's a shift that is happening, needs to happen. But yeah, that's a very interesting like strategy shift for you guys and that you're seeing those results.
Well, it's like seems like common sense. I mean, you guys are doing it and having great success. We're doing it and have the, like, that is so telling that, oh, it's a natural experiment. Hey, these people had longer to study for the bar. Guess what? They did better on the bar. I wonder.
Shocking. And no, people were literally like, I don't understand what happened. Like how we're like, really? Like they literally had like what, 4 or 5 extra months to sit, like.
Well, like the Barbrys of the world, it's in their interest not to understand. It's in their interest to just go, what? No. I don't know.
Just do your 12-hour days.
Just come back. Bar prep starts in May,
Yeah, no, it's a fight we have because sometimes people come to us and they're like, I want to have support like starting, in May when I graduate. And I might be talking to them in like December, January. And we're like, well, is there any way you could free up a little time in your schedule, like in your final semester of law school, like just a few hours a week? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, because that would really benefit you, like that's actually going to add up to a lot of time and make your life much easier later on.
Yeah. Alison, I'm glad we had a chance to connect. I hope it won't be another 7 years before you come back again on the Thinking LSAT podcast.
Well, just, invite me back. I'll be here anytime. Love talking with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Alison Monahan, boy, I don't even know how to describe it. Alison, what's the first thing that you would say if you were wrapping up who you are? What would you say?
Well, I used to give a really bad response, like back in the day, where it's like, well, I used to be a large firm lawyer. Like, stop saying that. So then we started saying we were running a media empire, but I'm not sure that's entirely true anymore. But that's probably, basically, like we help people, like we help them like do stuff that's hard, basically.
Law school and the bar exam primarily, yeah? Do you have what's your other shit you're doing that you haven't even talked about?
Oh, no. I mean, professionally, law school, bar exam, career stuff. That's what we do. Yeah. Cool. We basically rephrase it kind of like law students and like early legal career.
What have you been doing for fun?
Oh, gosh, nothing. No. No, I'm involved in a real estate thing. So I'm actually sitting in this house that has stuff everywhere and it's very complicated. So that's pretty much taking up all of my spare time these days. That and driving back and forth between San Francisco and Tahoe, which is, really fun to do like multiple times a week.
Oof, that's a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, cool. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go caulk a sink now.
Enjoy the caulking. Thanks, Alison. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. All right, bye-bye.
See ya.
Hey, Ben, want to take a quick look at the drilling accuracy leaderboard?
I do, yeah.
This is a little motivational tool that we have in the Demon to maybe you look at it, maybe you don't. There's a little trophy when you go to the drilling page in the upper right-hand corner. You click the trophy and you can see who's in the Demon drilling and what their accuracy on their drilling is. Right now, Georgie is in the number one spot. He has drilled 36 questions today with 100% accuracy. He has a little picture there of himself. Pablo A is tied with Georgie, 36 questions, 100% accuracy. I don't know how many people are actually looking at that, but that's motivating for some people, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, we both got around finally to watching that entire Dean Z video, apparently. Yep. And I wrote some bullet points. I don't want to dwell on it because we talked about it during episode 369 at the top of that show. So I just wanted to make sure that I was fact checking, because we had been reading like a partial transcript. I didn't find anything that I wanted to correct. Did you from last episode?
No, not necessarily. Not anything we haven't already said.
Okay. So there were a few things that were in there that just like jumped out at me. And I wanted to mention them specifically. She said at one point during the podcast, the biggest percentage of full ride scholarships that I can recall ever seeing is 15%. She was speaking for all law schools and said the biggest percentage she could ever recall seeing is 15%. And that means, she either misspoke there or she's just wildly misinformed, because the 509 reports for many, many, many law schools have full ride scholarship percentages well north of 15%. I'm talking about 50% at some schools. And, maybe she's only speaking for the top 14.
Yeah. Her competitors, right? That's who she cares about. Yeah.
She's also ignoring her real competitors just outside the top 14.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She's ignoring,
which is a very natural thing to do. You may just look only to the people at your shoulder, but
My
that might not be
peers
smart.
here in the top 14. What are you guys doing? Because I'm going to do what you guys are doing. And it's like, well, watch out for Wash U in St. Louis, and watch out
for Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona and UCLA sometimes. And there are other schools out there that are giving generous full rides to, half of their class. And okay, anyway, just wanted to make that clear. Here's a project, Ben. This is how Ben and I do our business, by the way. We like brainstorm business ideas while we do the podcast. She said that average indebtedness is something that the schools have to provide to the ABA every year, but it isn't published. Sorry, not ABA. Wait, did she say ABA? I can't remember if she said ABA or if she said US News. She said that all the schools have to calculate average indebtedness. I have it in my notes as ABA, but maybe she said US News. But she says she's giving advice to applicants. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And she's telling them, you can ask each individual school what the average indebtedness is at that school, and they will have that number.
Wow.
Okay. So if that's true, Ben, then I want the thinking LSAT demon empire to put some resources behind that and get that number for every school.
Yeah. Start at the top. Yep.
Okay. So if we had a CEO, I would tell the CEO, hey, make that happen.
We don't have a CEO though.
No, we do not. We have
to look around and wait for someone to
and no managers. We'll have to have a side discussion about how to do stuff like that, because I have lots of ideas and things like that. I just want to pull the trigger on it. I want it to be done, Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we can make a page that can provide that information so that, you don't have to be asking, like, really, do we need thousands of applicants asking hundreds of schools, what's your average indebtedness? Or can we just like have a page that has all that information?
Well, it seems like a great project, and I'd like to know those numbers. Really quick, I want to clarify what that means. So they're looking at all their alum, I guess, and just taking their...
Yeah, who knows? I was assuming that it's average indebtedness of the recent class that graduated.
Because the number is going to go down, obviously, over time, right? So then
it's going to be average indebtedness at graduation.
Okay.
Yeah, snapshot at graduation. What's this class's average indebtedness?
How much money do they owe once they walk out the door?
There's any reason in the world, that's going to be what it is. So anyway, we're going to do a project and we're going to make that happen. We'll have to talk after the show about how we're going to actually make that happen.
Okay. I do want to say one more thing about this.
Yes.
We tried to get the fees for all the schools, right? Because the 509 reports have lots of problems.
Yep.
And we wanted to know, if you get a full tuition scholarship, how much are you going to actually still have to pay in fees? Because tuition and fees are two separate things, right?
Yep.
So a full tuition scholarship can be deceptive. Well, there are about 200 schools, and we've been trying to pin down those fee numbers. Kevin has worked on this project. Francesca has worked on this project. And now Jen is currently working on this project. I would say we're 90% there, but getting the information is difficult. There are bad numbers in the 509 reports, and then we will look at the website. We will then call the school. The people we talk to at the school are very unhelpful in a lot of cases or provide contradicting information. So this is going to be an endeavor.
If anybody has any contacts at the American Bar Association section for legal education, we would really love to know why those Section 509 information reports are not accurate.
Yep.
My understanding is that the American Bar Association, when they, are supposed to be vetting these schools and doing, 509 is explicitly there as a consumer protection measure.
Yep.
Well, what consumer is being protected when the data is just wrong?
Being misled, really, right? Like you might not only not be protected, you might be guided in the wrong direction.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's bad. That's bad information. Is not going to be useful. So anyway, okay. 2 more bullet points from Dean Z's video. Again, this is Dean Zierfoss from University of Michigan Law School. She has a YouTube show. She said at one point, quote, if they just if they say they just won't have this discussion, and by that she meant scholarship negotiations, so they've already made you an offer, but you want more money. If a school says they just won't have this discussion, ask them if you can at least talk about what your concerns are, and they should be able to give you some counseling. So this was Dean Z explicitly recommending to applicants that even if a school tells you that they do not negotiate scholarships, you should still try to negotiate your scholarship. It was clear to me. She says you need to give them information. There might be information that they are not aware of. And just saying, I won't pay more, they need to know that. But what she meant was, hey, tell them something about your financial situation. They might be able to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little bit of an insight there that it was like, this is the time. She said specifically, if you're separated from your parents,
Mm-hmm.
make that clear. Now, I don't know if that has to be like legally emancipated, but you could say, no, listen, I'm 21 and I pay my own bills. My mom and dad are not part of my life.
Yep.
If you said that to a school, so don't phrase it to the school, I want to negotiate my scholarship. Don't ever say negotiation, right?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, she was encouraging applicants to negotiate.
Yep.
Like if money is important to you, you need to make that clear to the school to give them a chance to give you more money.
Yeah. Saying, I have concerns. I want to talk about those concerns. Can we talk about them? It's a lot harder for the school to say no to that than to say no to, hey, I want to negotiate a better scholarship.
Yeah. Can I at least talk about some concerns I have?
Yep.
They can't say no, really.
Well, what are they going to say? We can't hear your concerns.
We can't talk to you.
I mean, they're interested in getting you. That's why
Yes.
you're even having this conversation in the first place. So.
Yes. So you're going to talk to a sales negotiator when you have this conversation. Be aware that you're going to be talking to someone who's real savvy, right? Like this is the fox that you're talking to.
Yep.
And so you need to.
And they practice every day. You realize that, right? You're going into this.
They're getting off of one phone call.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but do have the conversation and let them know that the money is going to be a factor for you.
Yep.
At the very least, if you're not happy with your offer.
You better hope that money's a factor for everybody. But yeah, okay. For me, it's a factor.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing she said was she said many times like, well, you're going to have to pay something. You're going to have to pay something. This idea that you can get a full ride is just not true, which, maybe she just doesn't know that it is true, but you're going to have to pay something. And she talked about the value of it, how like, oh, it's worth it. It's worth it to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But then she also said, I'm also not saying to get into debt at $500,000 level. That is also not a good idea. So she's saying explicitly that it's not a good idea to get into $500,000 of debt.
She's saying it's not a good idea to pay the price that we are posting on our website.
That is what she is saying, because especially if you had gone to University of Michigan undergrad, and then come straight through into University of Michigan Law School.
Yeah.
If you're not getting significant grant-based aid, I am not talking about loans. I mean, I'm talking about scholarships. If you're not getting scholarships, if you're not getting free money, then you will graduate with more than $500,000 of debt from those 7 years of education at the University of Michigan. If you're paying their prices that are posted on the website. So, that's just her in her own words. But I think it is established then that full price is not the price. Yeah. Like it's not like if you're paying full price, that is dumb. There is no reason to pay anything close to full price.
Yeah.
I think 50% is going to be like the minimum, even like feasible type of offer. And then Ben and I are still, even if Michigan admits you and wants to charge you 50%, Ben and I are always going to be looking at, hey, how do you feel about St. Louis? Because Wash U's right there and you're going to be able to go for free.
A great school for free.
It's ranked what? 3 clicks lower in the rankings? 7 clicks lower in the rankings? Not.
Yeah, you really need the Honda at half price over a Toyota for free? Like, I don't see it. You can have this car. Here are the keys. Walk away with a free car, or pay half price for something that's mildly better, if at all.
Right. I mean, you'd be able to watch big time college football, though, while you're there for 3 years, which they're not going to have at Wash U.
Yeah.
But if you're going to law school so that you could be a college football fan, I mean, that is not the reason to do that. Okay. What's this? You got this from Slate?
Yeah. So my dad sent me this article. It's top of mind, obviously, because we have one kid in college and another one knocking on the doorstep. The article is entitled, "One of Higher Ed's Worst Kept Secrets is Out. It's Even Grimmer Than We Knew." That's hyperbolic. But this article by John Warner on September 24th of this year, 2022, is talking about what schools have done with their in-state and out-of-state student populations.
Okay.
So obviously schools make a lot more money, sometimes 3 times as much, when they bring on an out-of-state student rather than an in-state student. And surprise, surprise, since 2002 to today, these schools have dramatically, a lot of state flagship universities have dramatically shifted the ratio of in-state to out-of-state students. So for example, in 2002, the University of Alabama had an in-state to out-of-state ratio of roughly 75 to 25. So there were 3 times as many in-state students than out-of-state students. By 2018, that ratio had almost flipped to 34 to 66, the equivalent of a 180% increase in out-of-state students. And this one quote just stuck out to me, and I just want to hit this home yet again for anyone who still doesn't believe us. This article continues. As current University of California Chancellor Carol Christ said in a 2016 interview, she said, "Colleges and universities are fundamentally in the business of enrolling students for tuition dollars." And this is one way they're doing it, right? Like, hey, I can admit an in-state student for 1/3 of the tuition as an out-of-state student. If you don't believe that colleges are a business, that law schools, which are just part of that system, are a business, you need to hear what the people who run these institutions are saying.
Yeah. I wonder if Carol Christ accidentally said that in an interview, because we just saw Dean Z in that exact video that we were talking about. She hesitated and almost stumbled as she said, law schools. Well, I mean, they're thinking about this almost as a business.
Almost, yeah.
And it's like,
no,
what do you mean
is a business?
Almost as a business? I mean, the thing is, they're a nonprofit, right? So, or most of these schools are nonprofits. State schools certainly are going to be, nonprofit state entities, but they sell product to customers, and they pretend like they're not in a business. Maybe that has to do something with their nonprofit status, but they are clearly in a revenue generating mode. I mean, they're all about it.
Hey, look, it doesn't matter that they're not profit, that they're a nonprofit. You take the money that you bring in, you make your university even better, you put it into whatever you want, whether that's the football program or what. But then that leads to a more prestigious university, which leads to you as a dean or whatever as a successful baller.
You build. Exactly. No, I mean, dude, I've been still following David Fagman's emails on, that he sends to the UC Hastings alumni network. And it's just like, I don't know, the whole thing to me seems so self-aggrandizing, like his business as Chancellor of Hastings is to be the CEO of Hastings. And he's always in the business suit, and he's building skyscrapers in the middle of San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, with the wild amount of revenue that they take in.
Yeah.
Eric just sent us some links. Ben, he just emailed us privately, editor Eric, and demon teacher Eric emailed us about debt financing in university education. And it was just talking about how the universities are wildly in debt, mostly because of like real estate expansions.
Oh, interesting.
It's not that much of a problem for businesses to be in debt is the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every big business that, think of a big business,
That's how you grow. Yeah.
They do a lot of debt financing, right? Like, I mean, not Apple. Apple's just sitting on mountains of cash, but there are, it's a very common growth strategy that you make a business plan and you go to the bank and you borrow money and then you start selling whatever. And then as your revenue increases, then you can actually access more capital and expand even bigger or even faster or whatever. And all real estate works that way, right? It's all leveraged money.
Yep.
So the fact that the schools are leveraged is not inherently bad, in my opinion, but it does indicate that they're running like a business. They generate wild amounts of revenue and then they spend wild amounts of money. And they frequently do debt financing in order to cover that. The facts that Eric had presented were, pretty interesting, where it's like, well, the typical student is paying, a few $1,000s to service the debt of the institution. Because they are a leveraged business. So they have borrowed money and they're now going to basically pass that cost on to you while you're there.
Yep.
Colleges and universities are fundamentally in the business of enrolling students for tuition dollars. I like that. I wish they said that more often. Just made it clear that that's what they do.
Yeah.
They're selling you something.
Yeah.
It's not a public service. They're not there to do it it's not, the community colleges maybe are like a pure public service, especially in California where they all are free now, I think.
They're free. Well, that's wonderful because out here, they still cost more than I would expect. Community colleges out here cost what I would expect a 4-year institution to cost when I'm thinking about sending my kids to school.
In Virginia specifically, or all
Virginia and North Carolina, just at least the places we've been looking.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe California didn't do that. Maybe it was only City College San Francisco that did that. That seems pretty likely that it would have been City College that did that. Sorry. So in your area what is it? What's it cost?
Well, I just know for our oldest son, 3 credits. He's taking a 3-credit class, and that class costs $2,000. So, to me, that's a lot of money.
Wow.
It's going to get cheaper once he takes more, because once you take fewer classes, right? It's like, I guess it's more expensive, but still, it's the kind of thing where I'm like, what? Like, wow. Like that's what the cost of a 4-year institution I think should be.
Totally. Wait, they give you a preferred rate if you take more than one class? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Like if you take the standard, 16 credits per semester or whatever.
If you're full time, then you get a discount.
It actually, it drops just like a business. You know how like if you buy, I don't know, a membership for 10 months, it's going to be cheaper than if you buy it for 5 months. It's the exact same thing. As your credits go up, the price per credit goes down.
But yeah, the more you spend, the more you save.
Yep.
Cool. All right. This email came in. It is from Anonymous. It's about reading comprehension. The subject says RC reading speed ? The email says, after getting a 166 on the LSAT last year, I've only recently in the last month and a half begun studying for my retake. I've been using the Demon during that time, and as you guys promised, it's blown my mind, The service and its animating philosophy have given me a completely new perspective on the test. What do you think our animating philosophy is, Ben?
I don't know. I was just thinking about that. I was like, it's animating. So maybe the idea
don't pay for law school.
Oh, okay. I was thinking maybe focus on the intuition. It's animating because now you can like free yourself.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. The LSAT is easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
The LSAT is easy, I would say, and don't pay for law school. Our animating philosophies.
Sure.
The emphasis on understanding. Oh, wait, I could just keep reading. The reader will tell me what they mean. The emphasis on understanding and accuracy over speed. The repudiation of gimmicks in favor of slow and patient problem solving not only resonates with me, but seems to be paying dividends in my studies. I do tons of slow, deliberate drilling and reviewing. Semicolon. I'm currently at 93 on arguments and 89 on reading, and I feel like I'm actually beginning to understand the passages and arguments on a level that I didn't before. My question is about reading comprehension. Do you guys see any value in trying to slowly improve one's reading speed over several months without compromising understanding through a daily habit of reading, say, brief articles for 15 minutes in a speed reading app, slowly and gradually upping the speed once you get used to the current level? Ben looks puzzled.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with someone reading every day brief articles, but I'm a little concerned that once you shift your goal, then you can start compromising that understanding. I mean, if you can really do it without compromising understanding, fine. But as soon as your goal shifts, I'm concerned. That's all.
I don't think you can do those two at once. I think you need to have one. In golf, it's one swing thought. You're allowed to think about one thing while you hit a shot. Don't really care what that thing is, but you need to have one thing, not one thing, or zero things is probably ideal, but not two things. You're not going to do two things in the same swing. You're only going to, you need to think about one of those things. And I feel like on reading comprehension, you need to be thinking about comprehending the passage.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any, I can't really imagine that this speed reading thing, I guess, whatever, 15 minutes a day, and you do it as an experiment, do it for what, 2 weeks and see how you feel.
Sure.
But it's not a pearl, right? I mean, it's not something
we're not going to recommend it in class, but
No.
if you want to experiment it, yeah. Well, hey, look, we're science based. So if it blows you away in terms of helping you, let us know.
Anonymous continues, I used to do this, but stopped because any time spent speed reading is time that could be spent on LR questions or RC passages, which both seem far more beneficial than an activity that doesn't involve doing actual questions. Yeah, and it doesn't involve LSAT language. It's just not the LSAT.
Yep.
And we got 10,000 LSAT questions. We got 100 full tests, roughly. Nevertheless, Anonymous continues, there is the dubious argument that faster reading leaves more time for understanding, that less time to read, say, a paragraph, leaves more time to think about it afterward.
Nope. I think you're going after pennies and losing dollars by trying to get the sentences read in fewer seconds.
Well, you're separating your reading from your understanding.
Yeah, they happen together.
That's your problem, I think. Maybe that's a bigger problem for all students everywhere. It's like, if you suck at reading comprehension, maybe it's because you're separating the reading from the comprehending. Like, reading is comprehending. If you're not comprehending, then what the hell are you doing? You're not actually reading it. You're reading a word and then another word and then another word, but you're not getting the story behind it. Like, you're not understanding that there's meaning there. You're not putting the pieces of the puzzle together as you read. I hate this idea that I'm going to read it fast so that I can then separately think about it.
I mean, thinking does take place after you read, but it also takes place as you read. That's the problem.
But do it one sentence at a time. I watched the video of one of our teacher's classes the other day, Matthew, relatively new teacher with us. And he was talking about the use of Control F on reading comprehension to do Control F for periods. And I can see some value in that.
Because it highlights all the periods and makes people stop?
Yep. And I think you might even be able to tab from one period to the next.
Yeah.
But the idea there is a period is a stop sign and you need to understand what they just said. And you know how sometimes people read in a weird monotone where it's like they're not even reading the punctuation?
Yeah.
They're just reading the words and it's just like one sentence just bleeds right into the next.
Well, so I'm laughing because I read with my kids every day, the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old, and they don't do that as much anymore because I always call them out on it, but they do that sometimes. And, it just does not make any sense. Just like plow through that period. It's like, are you following?
No, it's a clear sign that you're just like not getting the story.
Yeah.
You're not comprehending. You're not getting it. You're not awake. So I've heard other people say, I read it, I skim it once and then I read it again.
No.
I don't like this. I feel like the skimming it is a waste of time. I would rather that you just read it.
I don't feel like it is. It is.
Okay, good. I mean, hey, learning differences, cognitive differences. I'm not an expert, so
I'm very worried though. When someone starts skimming, I think that you're going to fall right into the assumptions that the LSAT is hoping you make.
Yeah. Or you're going to skim it and then start answering questions, or you're going to look at the questions first and then skim the passage to see where the answers might be. And then you're going to actually read the Any of those strategies just seem overcomplicated, that it's not intuitive. I would much prefer that you just read it one sentence at a time. And that's where that Control F tip, I think it might be worth practicing. I would like to hear what our listeners think of that. Please email help@thinkinglsat.com and let me know if you try this Control F for periods while you're doing your reading comp. If you find that to be useful as a tool for slowing you down, I would like to know about it. Anyway, Anonymous says, I'm highly skeptical and it seems way too gimmicky and I would love to hear your thoughts. Well, we agree with your intuition, Anonymous. That sounds like a real bad idea. You want to read this next one from Julia?
Sure. Hi, Ben and Nathan. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and I'm so grateful that I found the demon for my LSAT studying. I'm hoping I might be able to get your opinion on my current situation. I'm a junior with a 3.92 GPA, and I'm deciding whether or not to take my 5th course this semester, credit or no credit. I took one credit, no credit course freshman year during the pandemic, and I have another on my transcript as a withdrawal. Okay, so you'd have essentially 3 total. This would be my 2nd credit, no credit course, semicolon. The course would be marked on my transcript as credit or CR without any grade listed and no GPA impact. I'm taking a 5-course load this semester and I'm worried about this particular history course / professor. I had no intention of taking this, but it was the only thing that fit into my schedule after I got waitlisted from another class in my major. The assignments / reading are incredibly unreasonable, 500 pages per week plus papers, and the professor isn't very transparent about expectations / grading policies. My other classes are rather demanding as well, semicolon. I'm taking 3 others at Bryn Mawr and 1 towards my master's at UPenn. Should I take it, credit, no credit, just in case to protect my GPA, give myself a breather, or would law schools view this negatively? I would take it, credit, no credit. It's going to help you avoid this unreasonable workload from this particular class, which will then also help you have more time for your other classes, which actually are going to be graded. I would not worry about a credit, blah, blah, blah on your record. What do you think?
I just can't imagine that matters in the post-COVID world.
One class? I mean, what's going to matter is a C and B's in your other classes because you can't handle the workload.
Everybody's got pass, no pass stuff. Everybody's got weird looking transcripts right now. There's a million reasons why that could be happening. I have friends who are like still super in COVID mode. Ben, are you aware of people like that?
Nope.
I know people who like barely go outside. They have immunocompromised family members, maybe. And they just are like, they really live their life 100% online now.
Wow. That seems like it's got its own complications.
It does. These are modern people. These are actually like smart, progressive, city folks. These are people who live in LA, attorney buddy of mine. And it's just like some of them like have babies. People are like super like freaked out about exposing their babies to this unknown, illness. And anyway, it's just, we're not that far out of the pandemic, right? I guess Biden told us that the pandemic is over, but truth is there's still hundreds of people dying or thousands of people dying around the world. And there are people whose lives are still significantly impacted. And I don't know, just weird shit like this, like having a credit, that's not how is that a bad mark on your, just doesn't seem bad at all.
But it could be bad for this class and others if you don't do well on it or it stresses you out. So I would say, hell yes, just do the credit, no credit.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I just like actually don't understand the argument against it.
I think they're worried that a CR on their transcript is going to look bad, but it's just neutral. That's all it is.
Everybody has credit, no credit stuff at places on their, you're not talking about 2 straight years of it, which actually in the pandemic might have made sense, but you're talking about one class. I mean, it's very, depending on the school, depending on what classes you're taking, like at UC Davis, all of our physical education classes were totally credit, no credit.
Yeah.
What's wrong with taking a tennis class or a swimming class or whatever? I mean, I can't, I think you're way overthinking it. They care about your UGPA and they care about your LSAT.
Yep.
And so, yeah, protect your UGPA with a pass, no pass class. Absolutely. All right. And Anonymous says, "Hey, Ben and Nathan, I've been listening regularly to both of your podcasts for several months now, including many archived episodes." So that's this podcast, Thinking LSAT, and also our other podcast, LSAT Demon Daily. "I have a question about the LSAT writing section, which I recently completed after watching Ben's video. For a little background about me, I'm a college senior at a top liberal arts college. While I have never been officially diagnosed with dyslexia, I have always had some signs and symptoms. My dad and grandfather struggle in the same ways, and so I've always assumed it's genetic. I've used spell check and Grammarly to great effect and have no problem getting good grades at a challenging school. I did not apply for accommodations on the LSAT. On the LSAT writing, however, the supposedly available spell check did not work. In an annoying twist, it underlined misspelled words, but would not offer a drop-down bar with a correction suggestion! I completed the essay, but it has a few spelling errors and a couple missed punctuation marks, like commas, etc. I believe the content of my argument is solid. The question is, should I go with what I've got, or should I take the writing portion again when I take my next LSAT? I don't want to call attention to the problems in the one I have on file now, and I'm not sure how likely it is that admissions officers are going to read it anyway. Thanks for your help, Anonymous."
What would an attorney do?
An attorney would do it again. Better.
I don't think it's a big deal. It's 35 minutes of your life. Do it again. Spelling mistakes, I don't think are going to be a big deal in this writing sample, but they also just don't look great, especially for someone who's applying to become a professional writer. I would just do it again. Stop thinking about it. Hopefully you can fix your mistakes. I mean, it sounds like you need those auto corrections. Are you going to get it the next time?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have the same problem next time, then, the thing is, choose a different word. Like if you're relying on a drop-down bar so that you can learn how to spell the word that you're trying to spell, there are other words that you do know how to spell. Like using big vocabulary is not going to impress anybody, and it's going to do the opposite of impress them when you misspell stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think just do it again, and don't worry about you don't get the drop-down suggestions. Just reword it.
Yep.
All right. Want to read this one from Rachel?
Yep. "I hope this finds you well and maybe makes it to the podcast. I'm honestly just blown away by the Demon platform." Oh, cool. I'm glad to hear that. "I took my diagnostic exam mid-July and got a 145. I was using to study afterwards and was frustrated with the way they explain things." Oops, I just read that company name. Oh well. "I work out frequently and wanted to learn more about the LSAT and decided to find a podcast for the gym. I started listening to the LSAT Demon podcast in August. Since then, I haven't stopped drinking the Kool-Aid. I like to call it the facts. And I have a
We
premium
got to come up with
plan.
something better for that. That's not a good. It's not a good burn. It's not like a good retort there. We need something. We need something a little more pithy, but we'll workshop it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a premium plan, and I have been following your 1 question a day rule of working through things thoroughly before worrying about timing. Tomorrow, I will have been using the platform for 1 month, drilling practice sections and plenty of explanation videos later. And I just scored a 164 on the practice test I took today. Okay, wow, 19 points up from your diagnostic. I'm planning on signing up for the November LSAT because I feel confident that I can continue to get better over the next 1.5 months. This is all thanks to you two and your excellent resources, encouragement, and honesty along this journey. Hoping to write back with a 170 something next time. Yeah, we hope so too. Nice work, Rachel. Keep up the good work. You know, you're the one doing all the hard work.
No, totally. Everybody always wants to thank us, and I forget to say too often. I forget to just say, no, it's you. You're the one that's doing it. I mean, we're just telling you how we think it makes perfect sense, and you're going to just put in the work and figure it out. So,
yep.
Yeah, no doubt you're going to be successful, Rachel. Hopefully Eric can bleep out the I bet he did already bleep out the company name.
Beep.
Yeah, it can be. I like that.
Yep.
Hello, guys. I just wanted to give a little praise to Lily. She replied to one of my flaw questions and gave me what I think is a pearl when doing flaw questions. Oh, should we make this a pearl versus turd?
Yep.
Okay, here it is. Pearl versus turd from one of our own teachers, Lily, by way of Daisy, who's writing in. These are the questions she told me to ask myself. First, does this answer describe something the author says? Second, is that why the argument is flawed? So that's is that a pearl for flaw questions?
Sure. I mean, it's exactly what we encourage people to ask themselves as they do flaw questions. Is that something the argument did wrong?
Yeah. Did they do it wrong? 2 steps. Did they do it wrong?
Yeah. So ours are a little shorter, but as long as it helps you understand what you're trying to do in a flaw question, it's a win.
Well, we amended that into a pearl. I'm pretty sure that Lily got that from us anyway, because we've been saying that for a long time. But it's just a different way of saying it. But yeah, on flaw questions, you're looking for something you can prove they did. Like the author has to have given you evidence that they did this thing. So like you can't pick an answer that talks about small sample sizes unless the author gave you a reason to believe that it was a very small sample.
Yep.
Like I talked to 2 lawyers in the elevator, therefore everyone in this building is a lawyer. You know, that would be like, oh, well, wait a second. That's only 2 people. That's a very small sample from a whole big building. Like, you don't know that that's all lawyers in that building. So you can't, if it was a weakened question, that would be a good answer potentially. Because if they had used too small of a sample, that would be a problem. That's the big difference between weakened questions and flaw questions, by the way. On flaw questions, the first step is, did they do it? Then is it wrong that they did that thing?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a pearl. Scoreboard is now 21 pearls, 66 turds, 26 ties. If you have a pearl versus turd candidate, you can email help@thinkinglsat.com or find us on social @thinkinglsat.
Okay.
Got this one from Chris.
Yep. Hey guys, listening to the latest episode and just wanted to mention that the GI Bill is no longer has an expiration for those that were discharged after 2013, thanks to the 2017 Forever GI Bill. Okay, that's good to know.
And we have a link here from the VA website. That's nice. Thank you very much, Chris, for writing that in.
Yep. I mean, we know people who were trying to get into law school before a certain time because they were worried about their GI benefits expiring. But
hopefully we no longer are going to think about that. Although people who were discharged prior to 2013 are maybe still going to be worrying about that, but that'll go away if the rule stays this way.
Okay. Yep. Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Oh yeah. Read this last bit.
Okay. So Chris ends his nice email with, just thought I should mention that in the event some crayon eating, window licking space cadet of a Marine veteran can't figure it out. Respectfully, a crayon eating Marine veteran. Okay. Okay.
I thought that maybe he was like an Army or Navy guy shitting on the Marines, but no, he's a Marine shitting on the Marines. So
Himself, yeah. I guess he eats crayons too. Okay, good luck.
The green ones. Yeah, delicious. All right. Melissa says, hello, Ben and Nathan. I have 3 letters of recommendation. 2 are bosses from Firehouse Subs and Cold Stone. That's the ice cream place. And both of those bosses loved me and still keep in contact with me today. So I believe they wrote good letters for me. Also, I have 1 recommendation from a professor. It was during COVID and we barely met in person, and it was not much of an interactive class, even though I was trying hard to get close to him. I just got a job at a law firm and I am a legal assistant, and my attorney I work with loves me and compliments my work ethic and catching him on his mistakes all the time. I feel like he would write an amazing letter for me. So I just started this job July 6th this year. How soon is too soon to ask for a letter of recommendation, do you think? So I think Melissa's going to maybe replace this letter from a professor with a new one from a lawyer boss. What do you think?
Yep.
You're good now. Like, she's been there since July 6th, and that's long enough that the new boss
the attorney likes her. Yeah. Just say, hey, by the way, I'm applying to law school. You feel cool with writing a quick letter for me?
Yeah, that lawyer is going to write things that make you look hardworking, detail-oriented. Maybe you're reliable. Maybe you're punctual.
Yep.
Lots of things that are going to make you look like a potentially successful law student. So some professor that doesn't even know you for a couple reasons, I would just go ahead and replace it.
Yeah, and it's coming from an attorney. That's great. I think they'll know. They'll have more authority about what it means to be successful as an attorney.
I see now that Melissa's asking a little different question than I thought she was asking. I thought she was asking, should I replace that letter? But she's actually asking, how soon is too soon to ask from that attorney? So do you think that attorney is going to mind? She's only been there since July 6th, July, August, September. She's been there 3 months.
Yeah, but she's not. All they really care about is when you're actually going to law school. That's not going to change. So I don't see a problem with asking now or asking in 6 months. In fact, now is even better because, it's not for a year. It's a far away thing. The closer you get to it, the more of a shock it's going to be.
You're assuming that this applicant is trying to apply next cycle.
It could be even later, right?
No, it could be this cycle. In which case she needs to ask now so that she can get the letter now so that she can apply.
No. Yeah. But even if you're applying this cycle, you're not leaving for a year.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. So the attorney's not going to be like, oh shit, I'm losing you.
Yeah.
The attorney's going to be like, oh, well, so I have you for at least another year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't see a problem with asking.
Yeah. Although if you're not applying this cycle, then definitely don't worry about it and don't ask now. Like, wait. You can wait 6 months if you're applying next cycle.
Yep.
All right. Want to read Joshua?
I have enjoyed listening to your podcast and really appreciate the free information you share! I'm wondering if you'd have any thoughts on whether I should retake the LSAT in January 2023 for applying this cycle. I like the idea of retaking it, Joshua. I don't like the idea of applying this cycle. Yeah. But okay, let's see what you have to say. I scored a 170 on the August 2022 test after self-studying over the summer with
Bleep.
and LSAC's practice tests. On practice tests, logic games was by far my weakest section. I always ran out of time, so I spent the vast majority of my study on games. Okay. On test day, I was shocked to finish games early and I believe went -0. Since I didn't study reading comp and LR much, I think I could improve my score in January, but I wonder if that would put my application to T14s at such a disadvantage that it wouldn't be worth it. I considered taking November 2022, but doing grad school full-time and working part-time on the side doesn't leave me much time during the semester to study LSAT, but I was thinking I could study over Christmas break for the January test.
I hate it.
You're trying to squeeze too much in as opposed to focusing on the one thing that matters the most, and that's your LSAT score. get the best LSAT score you can possibly get in January, February, March, then start getting ready to apply next cycle.
Yeah. Go to Stanford, go to Harvard, go to Yale. Do that with a high 170s LSAT that you get anytime between now and next fall. Apply, this show's coming out in early October. Apply 10 months from now, 10, 11 months from now. Some of the big schools, the top schools don't really even care about applications in September. So you could apply a little bit later. But yeah, January LSAT, God, applying in February? Nah. And I hate the idea that you're going to just study over Christmas break and then take the test in January.
2 weeks to get to change the score that's going to have the biggest impact on your scholarship dollars and your acceptance rates.
I mean, you're obviously getting it. I'm not saying that the LSAT prep itself is going to necessarily be arduous, but I would make sure that it's not arduous by stretching out the studying a little bit. Like, wait till your grad program's over, then study. Like over, not Christmas break.
Yeah.
Or
just do
it
an hour a
side. Yeah,
hour every other day. Like,
right.
Your grad grades don't matter. So actually,
that's true. It's grad school grades. So who even gives a shit? Why are you in grad school, by the way?
By the way.
I mean, I don't want to be a dick about it, but like, as a man who has 3 totally unnecessary graduate school degrees.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, what's your end game here? And you might have a perfectly reasonable one. There might be a reason why you're in grad school now. But grad school just for grad school is a great way to waste wild amounts of money and time. So you're already there. But, I don't think, Ben, you're not telling Joshua to intentionally get bad grades.
No, but I'm saying you can find 30 minutes a day to do the LSAT, which is going to have a much bigger, it's going to have an impact.
It's going to matter.
Your grades aren't going to have an impact. So,
well, like really bad grades could have an impact, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, B's and A minuses and that type of thing are not going to have any impact at all. Nor will A pluses have any impact at all on those grad grades.
Sure.
Not for law school specifically. Now, depending on, maybe you're doing something else, but in that case, I would be like, why are you thinking about law school? Okay. Chris says, subject, kudos to Leslie. Hi, Ben and Nathan, Demon user here who recently worked with Leslie to edit my personal statement. That's Leslie Blodgett, our editor on staff. I didn't know that personal statement editing could be done through the Demon until I came across her blurb on the About Us page. I cannot give high enough praise for the work she did to improve my writing. She always turned around draft edits in less than a business day and found ways to make my points clearer and more concise. I went from wincing while reading my personal statement to finally believing I'm on my way to a piece of quality writing. I've always considered you two to be the final bosses of personal statement review. My statement can be found here. Oh, well, sorry. Thanks. But we don't do that on the show anymore. Appreciate it. For good measure, here's a picture of my dog Pico drilling some reading comprehension. And that is coming to us from Chris. We have a dog with, I think, a cup of coffee and a bow tie looking at the Demon.
Well, yeah, it's a nice picture. Thanks, Chris. Sorry, I was thinking about this. Life is such a weird set of twists and turns. Leslie is my cousin. Years and years ago, she gave me the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Motivated me to quit my job and start strategy prep.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting.
Which led to eventually the Demon, the podcast, and everything we're doing today. And now she's working for us.
And work for Leslie. Yeah, it was Leslie was playing the long game, and she was like, "I
Why don't you go hustle out there
in the future?" Yeah, that's terrific. How do people like engage Leslie if they want to? I guess they just go to our about page, huh?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is just to email help@lsatdemon.com, and then that will get you rerouted to Brittany, who will then route you to Leslie. I mean, you could also email Leslie@lsatdemon.com, but I think it's probably easier to work through the help team.
Yeah, or you could go to the type form. If you go to lsatdemon.com/about and go down, you'll see Leslie, and there's a check availability there, and you can fill out a form to get in touch that way. But help at lsatdemon.com. Best in the world customer service. You want to read this one from Anonymous?
Yep. Hello, Ben and Nathan. Do you think one day law schools will stop negotiating scholarships? It seems that the balance of power is shifting away from the law schools and unto the applicants. Onto, maybe? Or toward?
Yeah, toward, if we're talking about a balance of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Applicants are applying to way more schools for negotiation purposes and also aiming for higher LSAT scores to gain not admittance, but scholarships to strengthen their negotiation power.
Well, I suspect. What's your evidence for that? I mean, I think Thinking LSAT listeners are doing that, and LSAT Demon students are doing that. But, you know, we're small potatoes in the market. We're not, I don't know that this whole game is changing like that.
I think you're getting an extraordinarily biased sample of emails when you listen to this show. You're listening to people who have been listening to us. They are doing everything they can to not pay for law school. And that often takes them months to get on board with, right? Most people who start this journey are expecting to pay for law school, expecting to pay a lot, and just trying to get in.
Yeah.
So I think we're a very small part of the market. And even if more people are doing this than before, it's still super, super small. That's my guess.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we could accept it as a premise, right? We'll do LSAT logical reasoning here. We'll accept that is true, that applicants are applying to far more schools for negotiation purposes. Well, that's not a good way of saying it either. Like we really don't want you to apply to many schools for negotiations purposes. Well, not in order to negotiate with the schools. Rather, we want to see what their first offer is. And I guess you could just call that all negotiation. Maybe I should stop. I just don't like this. It sounds bad to say I'm applying to schools for negotiations purposes. No, you're applying to that school to see what kind of a deal you might be able to get at that school. Maybe they'll knock your socks off. That's why you're applying to that school. But anyway,
I don't see why it sounds bad necessarily. I guess unless you're, I think that's what savvy applicants are doing. They're applying to multiple schools so that they can get those offers and then be in a better position to negotiate. Which is the first step of, you're not going to negotiate with 20 schools that you apply to. No, but it's for the negotiations that you decide to engage in.
So yeah, you're going to negotiate with some of those schools. All right.
Yep. This anonymous continues. I suspect that law schools will find a way to combat this and do away with negotiations altogether.
See, so that's what they're talking about. They're talking about like, they think that the game is let's apply to 30 schools and negotiate with all of them. And then, that's not the game that we're really playing. I mean, I think you should actually only ask 1 or 2 schools maybe for more money.
Sure.
Okay.
I think, I don't believe that this is going to happen because as the only way to make negotiations go away is for schools to start doing what CarMax does and say, okay, well, here's our fixed price. Because as long as the prices are fluid, they're going to want to offer you less than what they have to. And then sometimes they're going to want to offer more until they get you if you're going to ask for more money. It's like inherent in the system.
They're going to have to decide that they're not going to price discriminate. Yep. They're going to charge everybody one price. And they're going to have the price is the price. It's like Costco or CarMax. Yep. And yeah, that means that they're not going to be able to soak the people who are willing to pay the most. And they're not going to be able to give a full ride to people who probably could get a full ride elsewhere or who could get into a higher ranked school.
Yep.
And that model, just currently it seems as if no law schools use that model of pricing.
Well, it's not competitive because what's going to happen is the people who are willing to pay more will pay less. And the people who don't want to pay that price and are higher qualified are going to go somewhere else. So you're just going to drop in the rankings and you're going to lose money. Unless
the value really was there, like I could see, like the top Harvard, Stanford, Yale could just do it. like reasonable pricing. Hey, we're going to charge everybody $30,000 a year.
Yep. You want to come here? That's the deal. And now we're going to look at your merit. That's it. Are you good? Who's better than who?
Yeah. But I don't think you have the luxury of doing that when you're University of Michigan.
Yeah.
Like there are elite schools above you. You're a Toyota or a Honda. I can't remember which one, but you're one of those. And there's lots of you, and everybody wants to be a Mercedes or whatever your favorite car is. But there's only really a couple of those.
Yep. Well, and the incentives are just so strong, right? You can
Yeah.
even if you just tweak the tuition a little bit, now you can pull someone away, and that's going to help your rankings. Anyways, this person continues. To me, it does seem like a bad business move that a school would offer an applicant with a certain LSAT and UGPA a set amount of money to encourage them to attend their school, but then up the offer when the applicant returns with an acceptance and or scholarship from another rival school.
But that is what happens. That is true. I mean, Dean Z said that explicitly. If you have scholarship money from a competitor school of ours, you should let us know. I mean, she wants to know that information.
I don't see why that's a bad business move. That actually seems smart. If someone doesn't come back to you with an acceptance or scholarship money from another school, then why would you feel the need to try to pull them in?
Because she wants to price discriminate, right? She wants to charge you the maximum that you're willing to pay. So one of the ways of showing her credibly, I'm not willing to pay that much, is to say, I do have this offer here from WashU, and I'm going to go there unless you make me an equivalent offer.
Yep. Here's where Anonymous is really confused. Anonymous says, why couldn't the school discern the value of that LSAT and UGPA from the start? They do discern the value. They know what you're worth to them. They're just trying to get more money out of you and hoping you say yes.
Yeah, well, and frequently they make you what they think is a fair offer on their first offer. You know, like I do think that there are schools out there that are trying to do value pricing per applicant right away, that they just give scholarship offers on your offer of admission, right? Like, for example, New England Law School that's out there like fishing for people saying, hey, if you get in, we're going to give you a full ride. They know that you're overqualified. So they're like, we're only going to admit you if you're overqualified. And at that point, you're going to pay the fair price of $0. So they're doing their best to discern the value of that LSAT and UGPA from the start. They don't want to insult you with no offer. So that's not, I think that Anonymous seems to think that what's happening is typical law schools are just admitting people, no scholarship, and then waiting to see who asks for money. That's not what happens. They give scholarships to overly qualified applicants along with admissions very frequently. It's just that they don't always give you their best offer,
which is totally normal and rational. Like,
yeah.
If you go to some market in the street and people are trying to negotiate with you and they say, hey, how much do you want for this purse? You're not going to say, well, you know what? The most I'd be willing to pay is $100. No. Really, push comes to shove, I'd give them 110 and then throw that out there. You say something like, how about 50? Is that cool? And
you say a number that isn't going to insult them so much that it ends the negotiation.
Nope. But you're also like, would be happier to get it at that price than at your maximum willingness to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what Anonymous isn't understanding here, is that school, if you negotiate and get the maximum that they're willing to pay, they're still happy to pay that amount. That's good for them. They're not going to take a deal that's not good for them.
Yep.
So they're not going to ever make you an offer that they're not excited to give you. But they might give you an offer that's something less than what they could give you on the first offer, just to keep you in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and why give away more than you have to? Like, you might be perfectly happy with $50 and so great. Now they just had a little bonus. They can use that extra money somewhere else.
Right. If you accept any offer, then you apparently are happy with that offer.
Yeah. That's
right.
This is how the economy works. I don't know.
There's value. It's like having the benefit of like a couple one negotiations class, I think is really useful here, because like what you don't realize is that there are several different prices at which both parties are going to be happy.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. This person continues. It is a rat race that former and current law school admissions associates do not appear to enjoy or respect.
That's their style. That's how they negotiate. That's what they're doing. You know, the schools that say we don't negotiate scholarships, that's their first gambit in the scholarship negotiation game. It's
a strategy. It's not like they're actually sitting there upset.
It's the first move in their chess game. And some schools have just a blanket policy. We don't negotiate scholarships. And they're just saying, but I mean, that's what they say. Now, is that what they actually do? I don't know, because we have to see what the students come back with. And some students might get totally rebuffed. I mean, some students might come back with like, hey, I'm just not willing to pay that amount. I really want a better offer. And the school might come back with, we don't negotiate scholarships. But that same school and same applicant, if the applicant would have instead said what Dean Z suggested, which was, I just want to talk to you about some concerns that I have. And then when you get to sit down with them, and then when you tell them the concerns, then you say, I have $150,000 of debt from undergrad, and I'm the only one who's paying for this, and whatever. I have a new baby, I have a mortgage, whatever it is, just any reasons. And we're not negotiating.
No, we're just having a conversation. Yeah. You might be surprised what they offer.
Yeah. And they could easily say something like, well, you know that we don't negotiate scholarship money, but we do have just yesterday, somebody withdrew from they had an offer and they decided to go somewhere else, or they decided to defer or something. And so we actually do have this scholarship that's available.
I might be able to get you some of that. But notice what they've done there too. They still have won that chess move, because when some school says we're not going to negotiate, and then they turn around and give you $10,000, you feel like you're the biggest victor in the world.
Yep.
But really you just lost, because some other school would actually give you more, but it doesn't seem as valuable because they're also out there negotiating.
Or that same school might have given you more. They go to the we have this one that's available. It's a $10,000 scholarship. I didn't think that you were eligible for it. But now that you've shared your concerns with me and I know that you're eligible for it, then, we can work with you. And you could say, thank you very much, and go away for a little while. And then you could come back and say, man, I still have some more concerns. Can I talk to you?
You got to play the same game. This is your card. Their card is we don't negotiate, or we don't do many scholarships, or they're very rare, or whatever they want to say to basically discourage you from continuing to ask. But your strategy is to say, I just have concerns. I'm weighing these different options. We're not negotiating. We're just talking through my choices and your choices.
Yeah. I don't think this is going away. I will be shocked if this ever goes away.
No, there's too much writing on it. Yeah.
Like US news needs to go away, and then lots of this stuff will change. But until that happens, I don't see much like significantly changing. Okay. Last one, our current student, Amrit, says, howdy, I was hoping to get your thoughts on the dual JD program offered at select schools. And while I have your attention, what are your thoughts on private versus public schools? Two separate issues. I feel like we've covered the dual JD thing a lot.
So she asked this in class the other night, and I think she was specifically talking about programs where you like go to a Canadian school and then you get a JD in a US school. So I thought she was talking about JD MBA or something like that.
Okay, good.
I'm glad I said, that. I don't know anything about these schools in which you can get a JD from both universities, even though you're going to one. So it's like a sister program or something like that. So then you can have a JD in both countries. And the example she was giving me was Canada and US.
It's probably expensive as shit. I think a big time law school in either country gives you all of the opportunities in both countries. Right?
I don't know. My reaction to that was, hey, well, if you have any inklings of practicing US based law, you may need some sort of US certification.
yeah, don't get me wrong. If you think you're going to end up in the US, then I would prefer to go to law school in the US, but that's for multiple reasons. I mean, for one thing, the US gives these crazy scholarships. So that's a good reason not to go to the Canadian schools, even though I think their system is overall way more civilized than our system.
Sure.
If I had an idea that I wanted to maybe practice in the US, then I would leverage a kick-ass LSAT for money in the US.
Yeah. Take advantage of the system here.
On the other hand, if you know you're going to end up living your life in Canada, then I guess you have to talk to your fellow Canadians and figure out if there is any value to having a dual JD from, some school in Chicago or DC or New York or whatever it is. Maybe it's worth it, but I don't know. Like if we think about like foreign, study abroad stuff in undergrad,
yeah,
those tend to be just like very expensive luxury years of school, right? I mean, it's just like, oh, you want to pay an extra 20 grand for this year and you can live in London? Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it's great. Like if you can afford it, but I just, I don't know. How about public versus private schools?
I don't think about it at all when it comes to law schools. All I care about is what do you have to pay?
In the US, they charge basically the same prices. I mean, I guess that the really, really fancy private schools might charge more than the best state or best public schools. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, we just don't even really notice. Some private schools might have like religious things that are either appealing or completely not appealing to you. I've had multiple students apply to Pepperdine, private school in Malibu. They're very Jesuit. And so they're going to like ask you about your Christian whatever as part of the application.
Oh, okay.
So do you want to share that information? Do you want to be honest with them or lie? I don't know. Like everybody can have different thoughts on whether that's good or bad.
Sure.
Public schools, of course, I think are going to have a lot less of that, but price is basically the same. Scholarships are basically the same. I mean, you can get like in-state tuition, like we were talking about earlier at some schools.
But even then, the differences aren't as big as I'd expect. Sometimes they're pretty minimal. So yeah, just at the end of the day, what do you have to pay after your scholarship? That's what
right.
matters.
And remember, we had that one correspondent, or maybe I just saw the emails and you didn't, but we had one correspondent who had gotten a scholarship offer and then documentation about what would happen if they switched to in-state tuition. And it actually reduced their scholarship offer. So it wasn't like they could save money by becoming an in-state student. They were just like, no, we're going to give you, you're an out-of-state student. We're going to give you $15,000. And if you come as an in-state student and your tuition is $10,000 cheaper, then we're going to reduce your scholarship by $10,000.
Yeah, because those prices are all fictional anyway. So
right. Right. So they were going to charge you. See, that's the thing. They're charging you your price.
Yep. We don't care how we got there. You want to start at an in-state price or you want to start at an out-of-state price? This is what you're worth to us.
It's such a ridiculous lie, right? It's like when you buy a car or when you buy a house or whatever, and then there's just fees on top of fees on top of fees, and they're breaking it down with all these different itemized whatever. And it's like, listen, there's no reason that we have to do all this shit. All you're trying to do is make me feel good about the lower, like, here's the price. We settle on, we negotiate, like I'm paying $25,000 for this car, but then the actual check that you want me to write is $34,000.
Yep.
And
like,
that's part of the negotiation
some of that is
too.
Taxes, some of that is this. And people, they fall for it. But think about it. When you get a Demon subscription, we don't tack on taxes after that.
No, we don't.
It's all included. It's all included. Yeah. That's the price.
And even more insidious than that, like I get it that if you go buy yourself, a Coke at the 7-Eleven, they might have to charge you sales tax on that. But the way they do it with like big purchases, including law school, is they have like, I guess maybe law school doesn't have tax, does it? So, but when you're buying a car or when you're buying a house or whatever, in the same documentation where they're showing you like the government taxes, which I understand are unavoidable, then they're also just layering in all these service fees and various different charges. And they're putting that on, it's like in the itemization with the taxes, so that it's just like, well, you know, I mean, we can't avoid any of these. And meanwhile, it's like, no, what's that? What's that $750?
Yeah.
What's that for again? Wait, that's not, I thought the price was this. What's that?
Yeah.
And very frequently, those prices can just get crossed off of the contract. This is why we need to continue our fees project with schools. I'm glad Jen is on that. And thank you, Kevin and Francesca, for your work that you've already done.
Cool.
You can be LSAT famous. Get on an upcoming show by emailing help@thinkinglsat.com. If you have questions about the LSAT Demon, you can email help@lsatdemon.com. Please check out our other podcast, LSAT Demon Daily. That was episode 370 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. Thanks all y'all for listening. Thanks, Alison Monahan, for coming on the show. Nice knowing you. Don't pay for law school.